This presentation covers the topic of human brain structures and functions. We will be discussing the most important brain structures in this presentation through animations and some note-taking. So the human brain is divided into three main components known as the cerebrum, cerebellum, and brainstem. Now, the cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, the left and right hemispheres, and in this image below we have the left hemisphere highlighted in pink and the right hemisphere highlighted in blue. And then each hemisphere actually controls the opposite side of the body. So the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body, while the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body. And then each hemisphere is responsible for different functions. So the right hemisphere is associated with creativity and arts, while the left hemisphere is associated with more critical thinking processes and logic. And then we have the cerebellum, also known as the little brain. It's located beneath the cerebrum. And then we have the brainstem at the base of the brain. So the cerebellum functions in motor movement as it receives information from sensory systems, the spinal cord, and other regions of the brain. So its primary function is regulating motor movements, and it coordinates these voluntary movements such as posture, balance, coordination, speech, and basically just voluntary movements, whereas we'll see in the brainstem, it's more responsible for involuntary movements, and we'll go more in detail on that later on. So as I mentioned, the brainstem located at the base of the brain and functions in regulating involuntary actions known as autonomic functions that are part of our autonomic nervous system, such as breathing and heart rate. Here we take a closer look at the cerebral cortex and the left and right hemispheres. So each left and right hemisphere contains 4 lobes, and these lobes are highlighted here in this image. So in red we have the frontal lobe, in yellow the parietal lobe, in purple the occipital lobe, and in green the temporal lobe. So the frontal lobe is associated with higher processing of cognitive functions, and it's the primary region of our brain that distinguishes us from other animals. It gives us the ability to initiate our actions, to being aware of ourselves and our surroundings, and being able to make decisions, rationalizing. So these cognitive functions include listed here: planning, organizing, initiating, self-awareness, and it's even associated with voluntary movement, formulating your personality, behavior, learning. So next we have the parietal lobe, and the parietal lobe contains the primary sensory cortex. So it controls sensation and processes information that we receive from our senses, such as touch, pressure, and spatial sense as well as balance. And then the occipital lobe is associated with our eyes. So it's located at the back, in the back of the brain, and it processes the visual information we receive from our visual environment. So it interprets everything our eyes see. And it gives us the ability to locate objects in our environment. Next, we have the temporal lobe. And instead, this lobe is associated with our ears. It's located above our ears. Behind our ears. And it processes auditory information and allows us to hear and selectively listen to our surroundings. So it receives sensory information from sounds and speech from the ears, and then our temporal lobe comprehends or tries to understand the speech, which allows us to comprehend what we hear. So that's our cerebral cortex and the 4 lobes and their functions. And now we can move on to the brainstem and take a closer look at some important components of the brainstem. So over here, circled towards the center, it's a little difficult to see, but this is known as our midbrain. And our midbrain is responsible for motor movement, also particularly movement of the eyes. It's involved in vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and wake cycles, as well as temperature regulation. So all of these would be considered autonomic functions, since the brainstem is involved with autonomic functions. So the medulla is our relay center, because it relays messages between the spinal cord and the brain, and it connects the brainstem, where it's the area where the brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord. So it's a relay center between the two, and then it regulates respiratory and cardiovascular systems and its role in autonomic functions, such as heart rate and breathing. And then the pons are the largest component of the brainstem, and it is also a control center that works with the medulla and plays a critical role in generating the respiratory rhythm of breathing, and it also plays a key role in REM sleep. So in REM sleep, it would send signals to relax our muscles for body posture. And in REM sleep, this is where we dream. So the pons serves a role in not letting us act out our dreams during REM sleep by relaxing our muscles. And then circled there on the left, the pituitary gland, also known as the master gland, is known as the master gland because it produces many hormones and controls which organs or body parts they target. And then we have the optic nerve on the top, and the optic nerve carries information from our visual environment to the brain. So it goes from this process from the retina of the eye to the brain, and it transmits the visual information that we see.